Hello, welcome to Peak Lesbian. I'm your host, Carol. So, this episode, I'm going to be talking about religious trauma. This is a bit of a serious conversation and one that might be a little hard to go through, but I think it's important. There's been many studies that show that people that engage with religion and spirituality tend to have, better mental health. People like to belong. They like to feel part of community. They like to be loved and accepted. They like to believe that there is something greater than them, something out there, even maybe that's taking care of them or looking out for them. Religion definitely fills this this void that maybe a lot of humans have, or this need to feel protected. However, what happens when the opposite occurs with religion? What happens when religion is used as a way to both mentally and physically abuse people? What happens when religion is used to torture? What happens when religion is used to reinforce subjugation and bigotry? I think there is many of us gays and lesbians out there who know exactly what this feels like. I think, well, I don't think, I know many of us have had very hard and traumatic experiences around organized religion. Specifically, what I'll be focusing on is the Judeo Christian religion groups, or actually, I could call it the Abrahamic group. So that would be uh, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, the big three. And vast majority of folks belong to one of these. Fair warning here before I really get into the story time, because I do have a few stories. I want to give a warning that I will be talking about suicide. Um, I I've had experience with people have committing suicide, so that will be talked about. Um, when I was 4 years old, my mother remarried a man that would become my stepfather. My mother was not religious. My father had died 2 years previously. Um, she married a man who was born again Christian, and his family was very devout, very hardline born again Christians, really fire and brimstone kind of Baptist types. When they got married, my mom became very religious as well. There's a picture of me at their wedding in my little dress. I don't know if I was a flower girl or anything. I don't really recall the wedding. I was probably 4 years old. So, but there's a picture of me in this little dress, and there's a picture of a little boy about 11 years old, and he's in a blue tuxedo. This had been about 1984. That little boy's name was Ryan. Ryan was um Ryan was the younger brother of my stepfather. Now, in my family, the family that I now belonged to, my step family, my stepfather's family, um, they didn't like me. They pretty much hated me for no other reason than I wasn't biologically belonged to them. My stepfather hated me, and he was very abusive. His family hated me and generally treated me like crap. But not Ryan. Ryan took me under his wing, so to speak. Ryan was a very sweet boy. Ryan was very into martial arts. Um, they had a TV room, his folks. They had a TV, a special. Well, I had a TV building actually. They had some acreage in the mountains. They had a house. They had like 6 kids. Ryan was the youngest of like 6 or 7 kids. It was ridiculous, and most of the kids were already adult, but a few of them still lived at home. And they had a TV room, and Ryan used to. Me and him used to go out to the TV room and watch kung fu movies and ninja movies and martial art movies and all that kind of stuff. He was just a huge nerd for it. He had nunchucks and throwing stars and a whole like ninja costume. He also did martial arts. Like he learned martial arts and he was in martial arts as well. He had his belts and all that kind of stuff, and he'd teach me moves. And I remember thinking it was so cool to be able to like see swords and nunchucks and throwing stars and all this kind of stuff. And we used to go and play in the back 40, so to speak, by a creek that ran by the house. We used to go play back there, play ninjas or play war sometimes, or just walk around and look at stuff. But he looked after me. He kept me out of the house. He kept me away from his parents because his parents were just mean to me all the time. And his he had a brother who still lived there who wasn't too mean to me, but generally speaking, the family just didn't care for me. And um, I got the sense that his dad also was pretty hard on Ryan. There was something about Ryan that the dad didn't like very much. And in hindsight, I know what that is. Ryan was gay, and I think the family could tell that from very early. So I was his little buddy. I was his little when we go to church every Sunday to their big Baptist church, and you don't know if anybody's a Baptist, but Baptists like to stay in church all damn day, and then go back at night, and then go Wednesday, and then oh my God, so much church. Anyways, when he used to take me into the he used to take me with him to church, and then when they would split off for the kids to go, or the young people and the kids to go to like their separate church classes or Sunday school or whatever, he would take me with him, and I'd be with him with the older kids, which I thought was so cool to be with the older kids. And of course, all the older kids thought I was so cute, and they, you know, I think it got him some positive attention. For about the first year or 2 years that my mother was married to my stepfather, me and Ryan were around each other a lot because my mom and stepfather lived actually in a nearby a house on the property of my stepdad's parents. So we were around quite often. But then we moved a lot, and I didn't really see much of Ryan. But he left a lasting impression. I remember I think the next time I saw Ryan, I didn't see I saw last time I saw Ryan was 5, and the next time I saw Ryan, it was my ninth birthday, and I was living in the area again, and he came over to my birthday party, and he gave me a black ninja rope, and I was just so excited about that. And not to get too far into my family history, but I wasn't like I grew up in a very abusive home. I wasn't liked by really anybody. So any kind of kindness was very much, I just soaked that up. I was very excited for that. I didn't see Ryan again until a few years later. Ryan came by my house for I don't know, for whatever reason. With probably I think he was with his folks actually, and he would have been maybe 18, 19 years old. I remember it was probably around that time that we went to a family barbecue, and my brother and sister had been born by then, so that's why I was going to the barbecue too because they were invited. We went to this barbecue, and Ryan had joined the Marines, and I remember his dad recording at the barbecue and recording the American flag and going, "That's my son. He's going to serve the United States, God and glory," and all this nonsense. And I think it made his dad very proud to have Ryan go serve in the Marines. So Ryan went and served in the Marines, and I would hear bits and little snippets and bits and stories here and there along the line. My mom and my stepdad divorced actually when I was around 9 or 10, so I really didn't have anything to do with that side of the family again. But my sister would hear little bits and pieces from her family now and then. And supposedly Ryan served 20 years in the military, something like that. He was a long time in the military. And then after he got out of the military, I'm not sure what he did, but um, throughout my life, I thought about Ryan a lot. And I especially thought about him because I had heard from my sister that he was gay, that he came out as gay, and that his family disowned him pretty much, um, being the good Christians that they were. And so I often thought about Ryan and knowing that he was gay and knowing that I was also homosexual. I was lesbian. And I think it was around 2000, he was around 2013 or so. I wanted to look him up. I thought, you know what? it would be cool to reconnect with him, you know? He was about, he was a bit older than me, but it would be cool to reconnect with him and see what's going on. So I did some Googling as we can do, and um I ended up finding out that Ryan had killed himself. Um he had killed himself by cop. He had taken his guns. He had called in to the police and said, "There is a man with a gun and he's going to shoot people." It was him. The cop showed up and he pointed a gun at him and they shot him. And that devastated me. That was hard. So I talk about religious trauma. I think of Ryan a lot. I think of myself because I know Ryan was persecuted to no end by his family, by his community, because he was gay. I don't think people really understand the torture that homosexuals have been put through by religious communities. And it's not just religious people, I don't want to say that. Um, but by and large, God in the Bible or Allah or who the hell ever you believe in, um, has been used as a weapon against homosexuals. And it's also been used as a weapon against women, obviously. Particularly when I think about lesbians, I think we bear the brunt twofold. Because not only are we women, which is a lesser human in the eyes of most religions, but we're also homosexual. And from my experience growing up, I was very much made aware that I was lesser, not as valuable as a man or a boy, and that I was put on this earth to serve men. And then you add on top of that, that not only was I not going to serve men, but I'm also a lesbian. And I wonder how many lesbians feel that and how many lesbians go through just, a huge double hit from both patriarchal standards and homophobic beliefs. I was 16 years old when I realized very solidly that I was definitely same sex attracted. No, I didn't quite understand or even think that I was lesbian. It wasn't a word I really grew up with. I didn't hear about it much. It was definitely something on the fringes. I grew up very religious and conservative, so it was a big no no. You didn't even really talk about it. It was something maybe you saw on the news, you saw around, but you know, when I realized I was same sex attracted at 16, it uh, it had a little bit. I guess I could say a little bit of a nervous breakdown. I was still a believer too, by the way. I was religious and I believed in God and all that stuff, and I spent, like, the next year or so praying and fasting and reading the Bible and really trying to basically exorcise my homosexuality from myself, and, it didn't work. And I also had basically a kind of a panic disorder. I've always had a panic disorder, but a panic disorder really set in at 17, and I couldn't eat, and I lost a tremendous amount of weight, and I wasn't doing very well. I eventually was able to get out of that and be able to nourish my body again, although it wasn't the healthiest thing. I kind of got out of that funk by becoming an alcoholic. So woo. I think about how much like torture that is to be told from the minute you're born that you're wrong. Because here's the thing, even though a kid doesn't know what their sexuality is going to be as they get older, a 4-year-old may not have a sexuality yet or understand any of that. However, the 4-year-old is already hearing their parents, their community, and their church teach, talk, and tell them that this thing is horrible. This thing is bad. God will punish you for these things. You will go to hell for these things. And remember, kids believe. That's why religions, cults, any kind of belief system often wants to get kids to believe it, because if you can get kids with, simple, malleable, still very brains that are still in the very, fairy tale region, if you can get the kids to start believing it, it's going to stick. It's going to stick into adulthood. And so think about all the gay folks that have grown up in churches and heard this shit from the beginning, right? You're bad. You're bad. Like from the beginning, you're bad. And also, it's teaching you're bad for something you can't control, or that you're not like the church, conservatives in general, like not hashtag not all conservatives, hashtag not all churches. I don't want to hear that shit. I don't mean everybody, right? Okay. But generally speaking, religion believes and teaches that homosexuality is a choice. Or if they go so far as to admit it's not a choice, they tell you, well, it may not be a choice, but you're not supposed to act on it, which means you're just supposed to stay lonely and sad for the rest of your life. You shouldn't make any human connections. You shouldn't have a romantic or sexual relationship. You shouldn't have a life partner, a spouse. You shouldn't have any of those things. Oh, and remember, these things are what just is the core of like what feeds us as humans is human connection and love and sex and, partnership and building families. Lots of gay people have kids and make families. Me and my wife made a family. Um, you're asking someone to deny all of that, and then you're telling them it's their fault on top of it. And they're taught this from little kids, okay? So how much like brainwashing and trauma and like just because for me it just feels I've just always felt, I mean it's better now, but I've just always felt that I was just intrinsically wrong. And I know that's such a common thing for lesbians to feel and for homosexuals to feel, is that you're intrinsically wrong. You are wrong to the core. Your existence is wrong. That is just I cannot basically express how that messes up a person. What kind of made me start thinking about this topic is that, in the whole gender critical sphere and realm and, fighting it back against gender ideology and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of conservatives and there's lots of religious people in this mix too. And I've seen a lot of folks, mostly women, because that's generally who I have contact with, but women who are active in gender critical realms. I've seen a lot of these women support and not have an issue with Christian conservatives. And I've heard it said, "Oh, well, they're not like that anymore. They're, that's they don't care if you're gay." And I can't go along with that. And most gay folks won't go along with that. And I'll tell you why. I've already told you why. Religious trauma. We've all grown up in this. Okay. We've been abused by religion. So what makes you think that we are just going to think these people are okay with us? I very much doubt they are. I think it would take very, very little to tip somebody over into being a complete homophobic asshole. Um, and even if it's not extreme, it is such the case that we are still given second class citizen status. I've also seen quite a few people in a gender critical movement kind of have this idea that our sexuality or our relationships are okay, but they shouldn't be public at all. Like I've heard, some of these women who are out there going, I support gay people. The gay people are fine, but trans ideology is bad, blah, blah, blah. They will also throw a fit over a Disney cartoon where, a Disney animated movie where a girl has two moms and the moms kiss. Oh my God. The pearl clutching that happened with that situation. Then you have to ask yourself, wait a minute. So you evidently they're still labeling our sex and our sexuality and our relationships as not moral, not on the same level as heterosexuals. And my stance is that homosexuality is no better or worse than heterosexuality there's just it's not it's a non-issue. I just want it to be a non-issue, okay? I've also heard the same GCs go on and on about how, "Why do they need pride? You shouldn't have pride. Pride is a sin." You know what you can do with that. Okay, so I see this stuff happening, right? And I have the history with these religious conservative people, okay? I was born in 1980. I was in church as a 4 and 5-year-old hearing, the preachers of that time, just rail against homosexuals, just rail against, calling us evil, rapists, molesters, okay? I came of age in the '90s, heard the same shit. Focus on the Family was something my mom listened to religiously. And anybody who knows who Focus on the Family is, they're gonna know right away what a pile of shit that was. Um, it's a horrible, horrible organization and group. Downright, man, actually hateful. Those are actually hateful people. um, so I am sensitive, I guess. I have experience, so I'm sensitive to this kind of stuff. I'm sensitive to this the homophobia and to hate of homosexuality or thinking homosexuality is some kind of second class. And lesbians get it double, right? Lesbians get it double because we are not men, so we're getting the misogyny angle, and we are homosexual, we're getting the homophobia angle, and it's rough. That leads me into my experience in talking with and being around detransition lesbians. The vast majority of detransition lesbians I have met, which has been pretty numerous, have all come from very religious backgrounds that taught that homosexuality was a sin. And these lesbians transitioned to escape that, and even after detransition, struggle immensely with their religious trauma. Also, if you do any kind of watching of trans identified females that are on YouTube making YouTube content, you will quickly discover that a huge amount of the ones that are lesbian who transitioned came from very religious backgrounds where they were abused for being women and female, and they were abused for being homosexual. They were abused for being gender nonconforming as well. Religious trauma to me seems to be one of those things that, I don't know if the gay community talked about it much in the past. It's not something I heard a lot about. It's not something we talked about much. I also don't think that the mental health community in general, when they are dealing with um, homosexuals that come in with, other issues or whatever, I don't really know if they understand quite the length and, the severity that most of us have gone through with religion. Um, Being abused with religion uh, is such is I think it's just this next level, because not only are you being rejected by your community and your parents and your family and everything, but you're being rejected by God. That is, if you believe in God, if you ever believed in God, that is a massive, massive mind trip to have to go through. Okay. And so, I often wonder if this is something that is really looked at and thought about when it comes to the specific experiences of lesbians and homosexuals in general. I wonder um, how much internalized homophobia comes out of this experience as well too. So yeah, I would be interested to, hear what you listeners have to say and think about this topic. I might discuss this topic again with a guest, but it was something I wanted to discuss and get out there because I think it's an important topic. It's something that, my God, so many of us have gone through, just so many of us, and so many lesbians have transitioned, and these lesbians have come out of very religious, misogynistic religions. You also have to understand why so many Gays and lesbians are very adamantly anti-religion and against religion and downright hate the church sometimes. It really has to do with the abuse we faced. Now, all that said, there are some gays and lesbians that remain religious, remain believers, remain part of some church, whatever church will accept them. And, I they've made peace with it, I guess, somehow. I can't say I know any, like, religious lesbian, well, I know spiritual lesbians who are into spirituality or Buddhism and stuff like that, but I don't think I know any lesbians that are Christian or, really believers in that kind of stuff. If a homosexual person can make peace with religion and it brings them happiness and fulfillment, that's great. And I also think that a lot of us can never go there again. Can never go to religion again. I know I can't. Um, at this stage in my life, I don't think I could go religious again just because, it was too hurtful. And also, I just don't believe in it. Um, but the understanding has to be there. And also the understanding when it comes to, fighting the good fight against any kind of ideology that we think is destructive or, speaking out against the harms of gender ideology and, transition and the belief in transgender and all that kind of stuff. Remember that a broken clock is still right twice a day. Does some of the Christian right agree with you? Maybe they do. That doesn't mean they're right. And it doesn't mean that they're going to be cool with everything. And I worry sometimes that, you know, we already see it happen. The LGBTQ, it's all lumped one thing, right? And most people cannot distinguish between homosexuals and the trans agenda. Well, that's all. That's all I have to say on that topic. Like I said, curious to hear what you think. Thanks again for listening. Thanks for watching if you watch. Support the podcast if you want to. Share and like it. All those things are appreciated. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.